There's no doubt that influencer marketing is here to stay. Sorry to say for those skeptics out there. However, that's because it really does work. Here are a few stats according to a recent study by Mobile Marketer, where they found that 93% of marketers use influencer marketing, 92% of consumers trust it over traditional advertising, and sponsored influencer content delivers 11 times the ROI than a standard banner ad. In addition to that, Business Insider also reported that the market for influencer marketing is set to reach $15 billion by 2022. However, the influencer landscape and rules of engagement continue to evolve. This includes stricter requirements when posting sponsored content, the growth of micro-influencers, and new content types on emerging platforms. And as consumers become more media savvy, influencer marketing becomes more prominent. We all know that influencer marketing allows brands to connect directly to customers through the seemingly natural endorsement of someone they already trust. But not everyone has the budgets that allow for A-list influencers. And to be honest, sometimes the niche influencers are having more impact on who consumers are more willing to believe. Today, we'll be covering a breadth of topics, including tips for influencer marketing at any budget, what you should consider when engaging with an influencer, trends on emerging platforms like TikTok, Twitch, and others, along with the general do's and don'ts of influencer marketing. So without further delay, I'm delighted to introduce our panel today who will be taking time to introduce themselves. And I'll start off by allowing Alex to introduce herself. Alex, are you there? Just making sure that we can see you again.
I'm here. Hi.
Thanks so much for taking
me?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I can see you. 1 second, I just need to unmute and spotlight myself. We can see you now. Wonderful. Awesome. Alex, if you don't mind taking a moment to introduce yourself.
Of course. So I'm Alex Nikolaev. I am our creator inclusion lead at Pinterest. Our creator inclusion role is a new role that we've just created this year, and it taps into a few areas at Pinterest. I work with our creator management team to ensure that we're seeing representation across creators that we work with. We recently worked with really exciting creators like Elaine Welteroth and Peter Somm. I sync with our product team to continue to grow our product to be more inclusive. Earlier this year, we also launched a compassionate search function. And just yesterday, we announced that we're launching a self-ID tool because we've committed to having 50% of our managed creators come from underrepresented communities. And then lastly, I work with those creators to amplify their content on the platform and ensure that they have the resources and tools that they need to create with Pinterest. So we are really, really proud, and I'm proud that Pinterest is recognizing that there's a need to have a dedicated team member focused on inclusion and representation when it comes to creators and the influencer marketing space. So really happy to be here, Ian, and everyone, thank you for joining us. I'm excited to have this discussion.
Wonderful. Thanks, Alex. We can't wait to hear all the good things you're up to and your points of views on so much that we're going to unpack today. Next, we'd like to introduce Larry. Larry, just making sure you're there, and thank you for taking the time.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Larry Beeman. I am coming to you today from Chicago. I am the Vice President of Influencer Marketing at Edelman. For those of you not familiar, it is one of the biggest communications firms in the world. So we represent just about every brand and client that is out there. I myself have been in the influencer marketing space for just about 13 years, so since the very beginning. So we can talk a bit today about kind of where it's gone beginning to end. And currently at Edelman, I focus a bit more on the data suppliers, technology, and measurement around influencer. It obviously has grown from next to nothing to multi-billion-dollar business. So as companies are utilizing it more, they want to make sure they're getting their money's worth out of it. So that's what we're here to do at Edelman.
Wonderful. Thanks, Larry, and the perfect individual from Edelman to be on this panel. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts. And next is Rachel, just checking you there, and thank you so much for joining us.
I am here. Hey, everyone. I am Rachel Miller, Global Influencer Marketing Lead at SAP. I have been in influencer marketing for almost a decade now, which is kind of crazy. And it's been specifically in B2B tech. So I'm really excited to be on this panel and to kind of share some B2B insights to the discussion.
Wonderful. Thanks, Rachel. And as you say, a lot of people just think B2C immediately when they think influencer marketing, but there's so much to unpack with B2B. Thank you for joining us. And last but certainly not least, we've got Leo joining us. Hi, Leo.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Perfectly.
Great. So I'm Leo Chen of Levite Style. I'm a men's style and travel influencer based in New York City. Levite Style was started 6 years ago with my girlfriend Alicia as a creative side hustle. Actually, my background comes from finance. As an immigrant first, I came from Hong Kong and I studied accounting to make my parents proud. So I've worked at Morgan Stanley and Barclays Bank. And so kind of just like this journey with influencer marketing, my passion is fashion, photography, and travel. But my purpose really is about positive Asian representation and diversity, which is something that I really saw lacking in the media world. And that's what made me kind of start this side thing. And now it's become this full-time job. And yeah, since then, I've worked with a lot of amazing brands from GQ to Macy's and Audi, kind of in different kind of industry, from fashion to travel, cars, all kinds of lifestyle brands. So it's been pretty crazy ride so far, and I'm really excited to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you, Leo. And what would an influencer marketing panel be without an actual influencer? We're delighted to have you and looking forward to hearing your thoughts on the topics we're about to unpack at speed. Wonderful. Okay, so everyone, we're going to move into a question for each of our panelists to give them a chance to unpack a key topic that we think is important for them, specific to their background and expertise. So I'd like to start with Larry. Larry, Edelman, as you mentioned, represents both influencers and marketers. I'd like to understand what are the biggest changes the space has seen in the past 7 months, and how do you think influencer marketing will be different going forward compared to some of its nascent years?
Yes, absolutely. 2020 is literally like no year we've ever seen before, with many things being thrown our way out there. I think the one of them that's the most obvious is that with shelter in place and quarantine, we had to change a lot of plans for many brands across the board, getting rid of live media events and interviews and, just parties and all sorts of stuff that we usually throw and invite influencers to, and switching everything like this here to a digital format, so digital interviews, digital events. And it doesn't look like that's going to be changing anytime very soon, since most places reopening are closing back again. So we'll continue to see that virtual element play out. As well, one of the things that happened in 2020 is the BLM movement. So just like Alex was speaking to, we have a diversity and inclusion task force at Edelman that is making sure that we are highlighting diverse influencers on every program that we're running. Edelman has committed with our clients to doing 50% diverse options when it comes to all of the campaigns that we are running. So putting that front and foremost, and hopefully that stays across the board with many organizations. And then I think third, for influencer content, we're seeing more and more where influencers themselves are pushing back and saying, these filters are kind of insane, and I don't look anything like this. And now a lot of content is switched to stories and no makeup and showing true life. There obviously still is a place for very polished content and edited content, but we're seeing a shift more and more to showing behind the scenes true life without those filtered options layered on top.
Yeah. All change for the good by the sounds of it in terms of where it should be going. Thank you so much, Larry. Looking forward to getting into further questions. Alex, I'd like to ask you a question. Pinterest has grown in popularity for consumers, influencers, and brands in recent years. In your role, as you mentioned, you oversee global diversity and inclusion initiatives with creators. What does this role actually entail, and how does Pinterest intend to make a positive impact towards a more equal and inclusive future for creators and brands?
Yes, of course. And thank you again for the question. I think really the big thing that we're looking to get at, and one of the largest understandings for me coming into this role, was understanding just how broad that scope of inclusion and diversity is. So as I had mentioned, we've committed to having 50% of our managed creators come from underrepresented groups, but we're also looking at things like compassionate search, which is essentially a tool in our search capability where somebody is searching a triggering keyword like depression, for example, and providing resources to encourage them to get the right information and not just showing results that are misinformation. So understanding what that inclusion scope is, that understanding of belonging, is really important to us in every single facet. We're also looking at how we can look at our employee communities internally. We've got like Pinwheel, Blackboard, a number of communities that focus on amplifying LGBTQ work, work for our Black employees as well, but also how we can shift that conversation publicly and with our creators and tell those stories on the platform. So for us, I think it's really important that we are committing to the storytelling of everyone, ensuring that Pinterest is a space where people feel like they belong. And that not only comes from the creators that we work with, but doing a pulse check on how our product is performing for everyone and ensuring that we're committed to continuing to evolve and grow as a platform to ensure that people feel like they're included when they come to Pinterest.
Wonderful. And you just touched on a really important point there. It's becoming more data focused and using that data for the good to be able to represent all communities and individuals, which is really powerful. Thanks so much, Alex. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts on the discussion. Rachel, influencer marketing, as we just touched on, is not limited to consumer brands. There is an enormous opportunity for businesses selling enterprise solutions to tap into the power of influencer marketing too. What trends have you witnessed in recent years and months around the effectiveness of B2B influencer marketing?
Sure. Thank you for the question. 2020 has been a really exciting year for B2B. Ultimately, no one wants to see a middle-aged man in a blue suit telling you how fantastic their product or service is. And the power of influencer marketing, particularly for B2B, is the storytelling. Influencers provide necessary third-party validation, that peer recommendation, and they often tell your story better than you can. So it's been the pandemic, despite all the things, has been really great and pushing B2B companies to really dive deep into what influencer marketing can do.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Rachel. And it's interesting to see the receptiveness of businesses to influencer marketing. It's not just tapping more into influencer marketing, it's businesses actually taking interest in those credible individuals that are representing these enterprise solutions. Leo, you've been working as an influencer for a number of years now, as you just mentioned. And more recently, the FTC has placed stricter guidelines on sponsored content, making sure that users know when they're being advertised to. Overall, what are your thoughts on these changes? And do you have any tips for brands or influencers to ensure that they're in compliance with these guidelines?
Yeah, wow. I've been doing this for 6 years now and definitely seen the change from when it's just like an organic post, but now you have to make sure it's hashtag ad, hashtag sponsor, and that's also like the branded content tool on Instagram. And of course, like now you're doing stories and you got to do hashtag ad and stories as well. So that's just the constant change. And for me as an influencer, it doesn't really make that big of a difference. I understand the guideline because I also understand as a consumer side, when you're watching a TV commercial, when you're flipping through a magazine, you kind of want to know that it is an ad. So you know that it's not just something that you know, like this is an advertisement. So it's a little bit clearer why this and that. But I just think like the most important thing is still comes down to content. If you have good content, it doesn't really matter if it's an ad because it should fit with the quality of your post, with the quality of the influencer. It should fit in seamlessly with the rest of your work. And so to me, that is something that we just have to get used to. But in the overall big picture, it's not a big deal. I think it's actually better to clarify for the followers and also for brands as well.
Yeah, fantastic, Leo. It's really interesting because consumer expectations today, you look back to banner ads as an example. When they first arrived, people were in riot against these ads, but now it's become status quo. People are fine with it. Same thing with influencer marketing. I think it's going to just become the norm, and consumers will just become comfortable with the fact that there are credible influencers out there that have to abide by these guidelines, and it just becomes the norm. And it's not even when standards like that are put in place. But thanks for the insight. Okay, we're going to move into some group questions now. And as I've said to the panelists, please chime in if you want to build upon anyone else's answers. There's so much to unpack here. So we're going to get through as many of these questions as possible. I think the first question is perfect for Alex and Leo to kick this one off. There have been a number of shifts in the field of influencer marketing in recent years, like in the style and format of the content, like you just spoke to, the standards we just touched on, equality, micro-influencers, and costs. If you were to pinpoint one thing that you believe the audience should take note of in terms of these changes, one that you feel is really powerful, what is it and why is it important?
Yeah, I'm really excited to answer this question. I'm also excited to hear what Leo thinks as a content creator and influencer as well. But I think Larry, honestly, he touched on it in his earlier question, because for me, the one that stands out at a really high level is that authenticity of it all, right? We've all likely heard that buzzword by this point. But what I'm seeing, especially over the course of 2020, is that if we drill down into those specifics, that sort of means creators shifting not only in the content that they share, that curated content versus more in the moment or real life content, but it's also shifting in those conversations that they're willing to have. I'm finding that it's no longer just, where did you get that top from? It's shifted now to, this is a sustainable item. This is the social impact that the brand has, and this is why I align with it. And for me and the work that I do and the creators that I work with, that social impact piece of the conversation and how influencers are having deeper conversations online is sort of resulting in a stronger community building. And that's ultimately like a deeper engagement that they're seeing with their audience.
Transparency is the name of the game right now. And it's not just
totally
influencer marketing. Transparency as a principle is becoming so important in the world of influencer marketing. It's the brands you represent. It's the content you're putting out there. It's the transparency around the individual themselves, which I would imagine is, to your point that you're making, so important. And having that honesty, which really lends itself to conversations about bigger change and accountability, which is really great.
I do think you're right, though, Ian, and I think it comes down to that transparency. And Leo was answering it in his previous question, talking about the FTC guidelines and disclosing when something is an ad. The social culture and the ecosystem of social media, we are becoming more comfortable with understanding that these influencers are building a full-time career out of these paid partnerships and this sponsored content. And I think that it lends to the audience's comfort with that disclosure of what people are doing that's paid and what's not, when they build that authenticity and that transparency with their community. So I think that they really go hand in hand, and we're seeing that evolve and grow in the influencer marketing ecosystem, because we're getting more comfortable about it, because we have our influencers being more comfortable being open and honest about what they're doing. Whether that happened as a result of them being forced to or not, I don't think it really makes a difference, but I think it does come off in that authenticity and that transparency, who is successful in it and who is less successful in it.
Leo, I think you're back.
This is the authenticity of it all.
So I guess I'll just jump in now. But I really like what you said earlier about just being real and sharing, especially like what's happening. So I think that's number one, especially like this year, just dealing with being inside and also with Black Lives Matter and sharing all these important things. And now also with the election and just telling people to go out to vote. Those are all like very important things. I think this year has really shown that like your bread and butter, your specialty might be in fashion and travel, but at the end of the day, you have an audience, you have a following, and you need to do more than just the photo. And I think that's kind of the content that's changes so much, is that one, yes, you can be more authentic, you can tell more important things out there, but also it's just like the way the content has changed also demands more out of influencers. I was thinking back, like when I first started, it was just like blog posts and Instagram, and now there is there was Snapchat, and now there's stories, and then now there's TikTok, and there's Reels, and even like my Instagram carousel post has become like 10 photos, and it feels like a mini blog post. So I think like there's just so much content, and now we can share it in so many different ways. An Instagram post is so different from your story, and it's so different from a TikTok video. And so it's just, in a way, I like to explain to people when they DM me about content, it feels like just like quantity of quality. Like there's just a lot of good quality content. And as someone who's doing influencer marketing for brands, I think that's also like different ways and different tools to reach different audience, because you can have photos and stories and long form videos on YouTube, and you can also have blog posts, but you can also have short how-to videos on TikTok. There's just really different ways to reach different audience for different purposes.
Yeah, great. So to summarize that, Alex, transparency, authenticity is a huge trend. Leo, influencers recognizing their position as a platform versus just a volume of content driver, and they have to recognize that and reach new audiences. Fantastic. Thank you both. Next question. I think I'd like Larry and Rachel to answer this one, and others build, please. It's fair to say that influencer marketing has passed the effectiveness test for marketers, if you will, where between March and August, 21% of US consumers bought something because of an influencer for the first time, according to Velasas. However, most people tuning in today are not working with six-figure marketing budgets. Where should they start in determining whether influencer marketing is right for their business? And what are some of the lower cost tactics they should consider?
Yeah, I'll jump in there. There are several tools that are out there that are very inexpensive or even free to start. Edelman's client roster is much larger, so we have to pay tens of thousands for any tool. But Upfluence as a platform offers a free Chrome extension plugin that you can use for demographic data. A lot of the big tools offer almost like a freemium, where you can get for like $100 a month access to tools to do searching from influencers instead of paying, again, tens of thousands of dollars. So I would definitely look there. Influencermarketinghub.com kind of like rates all of these tools and can give you those options. When it comes to actually working with influencers, as you can imagine, micro influencers, have the highest engagement rates. Typically, they have the lowest cost threshold. So it's a great place to test at a low dollar value. And usually if you're a niche product, they might be the right choice anyway, because they have such a more specific connection to your brand. And then if your business is one that makes sense for affiliate codes or something like that, you could work with influencers on that. If you're like a D2C brand that is selling products online direct to consumers, they may be open to working with you on a conversion basis instead of a flat rate basis. And then the last thing I would say when you're looking at influencer selections, making sure that it's a right fit for you, for them, for the brand, but also making sure that the economics of it work. Not paying exorbitant rates just for a face or a person, and making sure that the money makes sense along with all of the content they'll be producing, using their name and likeness, but making sure it makes sense in the end.
I'll jump in here. Kind of to echo Larry from the technology side of the house. Budget should not be a barrier to jumping into influencer marketing. While I have access to the latest and greatest tools for identification and engagement, I frequently just use native Twitter or Instagram to search hashtags to find new voices. So that's free. Anybody can do that. And while transactions should be mutually beneficial, they don't have to be monetary. I think that's really important reminder. There's a lot of win-wins for certain individuals where it could be networking, content syndication, access to sneak previews. There's just a lot of ways you can kind of get really creative and think out of the box where you don't have to be like, oh my goodness, I don't have 10 grand to pay for this person. Sometimes that's not what they're looking for. Just have a really open, candid conversation and you can create some really amazing content.
Wonderful. Leah, I'd love to hear your point of view on that last statement Rachel made.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think that's where influencer marketing is not just money, money, money. I think there's also a lot of networking and building relationships. Specifically for me, I've worked with brands purely because I'm a huge fan of the brand. And depending on the marketing needs and also because I have a good relationship with the marketing person, I'm happy to help them out. And, so it helps that I'm a fan of the brand. At the same time, I'm friends with the brand essentially. So, I understand the business side of it is like there's marketing budgets, there's different times of the year, there's different pushes. So just understanding how that works, I think it's good to build that relationship. And that brand could help also as influencer help feature me to bring me to their audience as well. So it's a good cross promotion in that sense.
Yeah, wonderful. Great point there, Rachel. And thanks for the commentary, Leo. Next question, I'd like to go to Alex and Leo and then others. Bill, please. What are the biggest misconceptions about influencer marketing? What are the biggest mistakes or oversights that you see influencers and or companies making in this space?
I think that there are a couple of things. Number one, that finding that proper relationship is a huge one. Everybody has just said that, making sure that the relationship is real, it feels organic. There's nothing less compelling than working with a brand partner that feels inauthentic and is just blatantly inauthentic. So I think that's a mistake on a brand side or even on a creator side, accepting that partnership when you know it's not the right one for you. I think as an influencer as well, one of the biggest misconceptions is that, it's easy to achieve success quickly or that one viral piece of content translates into long-term success. As we've been talking about, I think that, we need to recognize that this is a real industry. This is real work. It's consistent, and influencers, big or small, are really dedicating their time and energy to creating content. So if they have that growth mindset, being able to establish that long-term relationship as a brand partner and vice versa is always there. And it's a great way to keep your audience engaged and have everyone grow with you, right? So I know at Pinterest, we have our products and platforms evolving alongside creators because we see this changing and we see the industry changing. We've just launched story pins. And again, Leo touched on it, saying that there's this need from that shift in blog posts to telling longer form stories directly on platform. And we want people to be able to do that. So having that space to form conversations and content creation to build the audience right on the platform, we see is so important. And we just want people to be able to continue to consistently achieve success, because I really think that that's one of the misconceptions is just, you have one viral video and it's over, you're established as an influencer. That's really just where the fun starts.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I think the biggest misconception about influencer marketing, I think for outsiders looking in, they just think it's so simple. You just take a photo, just take a photo and you're good, just post it on Instagram. But it's really not just that. I think people think, oh, you just have to look good, you post a photo and you're done, right? And I think like when new people discover my profile and they just DM me, hey, how'd you do it? And I'm like, 6 years of work? I can't summarize it into 2 sentences. It's not a overnight success thing. It takes a lot of work. It takes, constantly trying to get better. If you're a content creator, constantly getting better at taking photos, taking videos. How can you tell your voice? How do you build a platform, build an audience? Like that's really hard to do. It's not a one-time thing. And so like, I think that's like one thing people think is easy. But obviously like you guys mentioned, it's a real business. Obviously you have these amazing professionals here. And like, this is why like you need a whole marketing team, a whole PR team to create a successful campaign, because there's so many moving parts. I think people think they send you clothes, you take a picture, you snap, you're done. Like, no, it's the marketing team comes up with a plan, what to promote, how to promote, what is the vibe, what is the brand image, what's the message, and then there's also managers that manage contracts and negotiations and deliverables. And then you have the influencer who goes out and do the work and edit the content and go with all the guidelines. And then finally we post. Like, there's so much behind the scenes, all these amazing people that are behind the scenes to make the one photo happen per se. And so I think like that's a big misconception. And that's why it is such a big industry now. Another thing I kind of see that I guess it's like a mistake that I've seen from brands when it comes to influencer marketing is new up and coming companies that are not completely done with their product per se, like their website or their social media it's not consistent, it's not finished product, but they just think, okay, influencer marketing, it's good, go for it. But like, influencers can do an amazing job, but at the end of the day, if we're driving traffic to the website, but the website is not done or it's not complete, it doesn't make sense. It's kind of driving to, there's no point. On the other hand, you also have brands that are more established, but they're very new to the influencer marketing game. Like they just been kind of traditional, old fashioned. They do print, they don't do any influencer marketing. And now they think it's just an easy thing. Don't we just send them clothes, they take a photo, it's done? But no, like there's industry standards, there's rates, there is deliverables. Like, so I think like there's also two extremes, like new brand that just go all in influencer marketing when they're not finished. And then you have established brands that's so new and they just think it's an easy one-time thing. So that's kind of what I've seen.
Yeah, respecting the profession for what it is and the amount of work and effort that has to go in to making it a success. Fantastic. Thanks for those insights, both. Next question, I'd love Rachel and Larry to tackle. What are the main metrics you look at when measuring the success of influencer marketing campaigns? And what are the most successful campaigns you've worked on personally? And what were some of those results?
Sure, I love this question. I am a data geek for sure. And at SAP, if it moves, we track it. But those metrics vary greatly depending on the goal of the campaign. Sometimes it's brand awareness, so you're looking at reach, or you're driving registrations to a webinar. But you definitely need to know what success looks like, and that should be something that you build in upfront. So when the campaign is complete, you can quickly determine whether it was a win or not. As far as my favorite campaign or one that was successful for this year, SAP, like many large enterprise companies, we have been historically, I want to say since the dawn of time, a very in-person centric company. Of course, 2020 threw that all out the window, and we had the opportunity to pivot, and many of our keystone events we made completely virtual, which had many benefits that we did not see. For example, Sapphire, which is normally in Orlando, around 20, 30,000 people we typically attend. We opened that up to the world. We had a kind of a Netflix on-demand style programming. Hundreds of thousands of people tuned in. So it was really great to see the success. And that we did for brand awareness. So I think the event hashtag, we had over 250 million reach. And I'm proud to say that our influencer team, the folks that we activated for this particular event, 23% of that 250 million came from 14 individuals. So they really drove the conversation. And it was really cool to see just what they're capable of doing in a short amount of time.
Incredible.
Yeah, and I agree with those points of setting those success metrics up front and making sure they're those higher level things versus saying, yes, we got a lot of comments or impressions or video views. So the things we most frequently look at these days are ad recall, brand awareness, consideration of the product or company actually lifting in sales. So whether that is app installs for a company, purchasing an e-com, purchasing at point of sale in retail, and working with data providers to show against our mixed modeling where we're making an increase in sales. And then even more commonly right now, brands are curious if they're relevant to the consumers they're going after and potentially younger consumers that they're going after, and if companies or if consumers trust them at all. To Alex's earlier point of, it's not just about pushing products anymore. It's like, if you sell shoes, how are you benefiting the world? How are you not destroying the world? So making sure that consumers now trust you to participate. And some of that is done through survey questions to influencer audiences to see if they're remembering what we put through their feeds from an organic standpoint and a paid standpoint, and seeing how we're shifting their perceptions over time with the content that influencers are producing with us. So, are we making them want to consider the product when they didn't before? Are they more likely to purchase it now than they were before? Or do you trust the brand or feel like the brand is more for you than it has previously? And then some of the, really advanced technology allows us to see, have people seen ads that were created by influencers, and then did they go into a quick service restaurant or into a retailer? So just, it's kind of pulling together finally a lot of what was available with performance marketing and paid social marketing, and bringing that into the influencer space, since the technology now allows for that.
Fantastic. Thanks for those great answers, both of you. We are running on short on time here. So move through these next few questions as quickly as possible. But before we get into more questions from myself and the audience tuned in, we've got a question from one of our current students in the digital marketing diploma at BrainStation. Alice is joining us to ask her question. Thank you so much, Alice, for your question. I'll hand over to you and ask your question.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me today. My name is Alice, and I'm currently in the Digital Marketing Diploma program. So the question I really like to ask is, employees are often a brand's first and best influencers. So how would some of you recommend brands engage these employees in creating custom but authentic content?
Who would like to kick that one off?
I could jump in just because
Alex?
I do feel, I really I enjoy this question, because I feel like it's something for the first time at an organization like Pinterest that I feel I can speak really honestly about it. And I think that this rings so true, right? I feel like since I've come onto the organization at Pinterest, I've seen increased excitement around what's new in my personal networks and on my social platforms, just as a result of me discussing the work that I do and why it excites me. And I think that one of the reasons that works, and one of the, recommendations I would make, is that I really feel that Pinterest as a brand doesn't require me to change or adapt that intensely as an employee. They really see us as like a person first, both in and out of the workplace, and encourage our hobbies. Like, I have a podcast, I talk about social impact and activism online, and they almost cultivate that, and they want to create a culture that makes every employee feel like an extension of the brand that is Pinterest. We've got an internal day, it's called KnitCon. It's actually like every employee takes the day off, and we bring Pinterest to life. Employees teach classes on their hobbies, like anything from Zumba to like a tea sommelier doing a tea tasting. So they really like cultivate this culture that encourages your hobbies, your activities that are inspirational for you, because they want to be an inspirational place online. So I think if I'm giving any advice to a brand, it's creating that mutual respect and understanding that an employee is an individual and a human first. And that will ultimately, I think, translate into authenticity. And it comes out in my being a brand ambassador for the company that I work for. Like, I can speak passionately to it. I'm excited to talk about it. And I'm now acting as an extension of that brand.
Yeah, credibility in your voice is so important in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
That was a fantastic question, Alice. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
I'm going to move on to a question here for Larry and maybe Leo to build. Tell us about how you've experimented with or been successful on emerging platforms. Any tips for those looking to explore influencer marketing platforms like TikTok, Triller, or Twitch?
Yeah, I would say just go for it. I feel like people discuss and go back and forth and think it's too new and not ready. Again, I've been doing this a long time. And when the Twitter launched, everyone lost their mind and had no idea what to do with it. The same thing RIP for, Vine and Periscope, and, same thing happened with Instagram and all of that. So my advice is to just jump in, because, otherwise you'll be behind instead of ahead. And, it's all just social platforms. So just dive in. I think one thing that's amazing is about how affordable technology is becoming and how young people start using this. So that's why TikTok with a younger audience it's caught on so much, because video editing is kind of like a skill set that's baseline now with younger students than it is with those that are older. It's kind of like how our generation is a little better with photography than the generations before. So it's going to be amazing to see the continued evolvement of that when the next generation is like insane with AR and VR, and it's just baseline like what they know. So I think brands get to benefit from this expertise and this technology that they don't really have to like participate in, but just get kind of the benefits from that. So it'll be interesting to see how much more sophisticated it becomes.
Brilliant, Larry. Leo, before you dive into that, I'm going to move into the public Q&A, given the time that we have, because the first question, I think, will allow you to speak to this question itself too, hopefully. So thanks to everyone that has sent in a question. We're going to get through as many of these as possible. And for the panelists, it's a rapid fire round, and I'll dive through as many of these as we can. The first one is from Armand. I think, Leo, you're probably best placed to answer this. How did you leverage your engagement with followers to draw brands to you?
Let's see. I think in the beginning, it was really just like showing a new expert in men's fashion. So for me, I represent a very interesting niche. I'm an immigrant. I'm a guy that worked in finance, and now I work in fashion. So I think like that kind of covers a lot of guys out there, a lot of people out there who are working in finance or a lawyer or a doctor, but they've always loved fashion. So I don't think like your interests and your passion should just be pushed aside just because your job and your profession is otherwise. So I think like right away from that was kind of how I was building my personal image. And as I got more following, I was able to show the brands the kind of audience that was interacting with my content. And in the beginning, starting out, essentially I felt like a small business. I basically did cold call. I DM every single brand. I email every brand I could. I found their contact information just to show that, hey, one, you don't really have Asian guys in your clothes. You don't really advertise to a different diverse market. I think like my profile could lead into that for you if you want to break into that, especially. And also I'm in New York City, so like that's also another like target for geographic in that sense.
Fantastic. And to build upon the previous question, how are you trying new platforms like Triller, Twitch, TikTok?
Yeah, for TikTok, that's been a lot of fun just learning that platform. If you go on my TikTok, I started actually last fall. That's when I noticed like it was really blowing up, really growing. Literally any kind of video could be on the For You page, kind of similar to how Instagram used to be with the Explore feed. So I thought like this is a great opportunity to try. But the thing is like, I don't dance, I don't sing, I don't do funny videos, but I understand people look at TikTok, they think, oh, it's for teenagers. I'm too old. It's not for me. But I felt like that's the kind of voice we all had. I feel like that's the kind of voice like our parents, our grandparents have about Facebook and Instagram. And so you don't want to get left behind with social media and technology. And so with new platforms like TikTok, just try it out. Kind of like what we've been saying, like just try it out. You never know. It might work. It could go viral. And I just think like, for example, like a trending video, change it to fit your niche. So for me, I didn't do like the funny dance, but I did similar, but with like fashion. Like I kind of put my own fashion spin on it and try to see how that platform grow as it's going. And in the 6 months, it's already growing to such high quality content with how to and lots of fashion. And I also really love like the 80-20 rule from Gary Vee. So he's saying like 80% of your focus should be on your bread and butter. So for me, it's Instagram. 80% of your effort is on Instagram. 20%, you should always be trying out different platforms like TikTok and Snapchat and LinkedIn and Twitter. So in case Instagram goes down for a day or something goes wrong, you have other platforms to fall back on. So you're never just all your eggs in one basket. You're trying out different platforms. So if anything happens, any big change, you're ready to go.
Awesome. That's great insight. Thanks, Leo. And I'm looking forward to checking out your TikTok page and seeing your upcoming dance moves, because I'm going to challenge you to that. I want to see it. It's all about authenticity at the end of the day. Don't be scared. Next question is for Rachel from Chantel. In your opinion, how can B2B influencer marketing have direct correlation to a company's bottom line? B2B solutions are often pricey compared to B2C purchase and may not convert right away. Great question, Chantel.
That is a really good question. Obviously, the sales cycle is much longer than with B2C. It's not really a flippant purchase by any means, but it can definitely contribute to the bottom line. And it really depends on, again, the goal of the campaign, like we were talking about earlier with your metrics and what stage of the funnel are you targeting, whether it's, bottom or, there's just a lot of different ways you can address that. But the peer recommendation cannot be undervalued. When someone looks like you, talks like you, they have the same pain points, and they're offering a solution that's really powerful and can definitely contribute to your bottom line.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel. Next question here is from Nicole, and I think I'm going to send this to Larry. As a brand, how do you figure out the balance between organic influencers, paid influencers, and affiliates? Obviously, you represent so many brands.
Yeah, it really does depend for the brand. There's no quick and easy option for that. I think paid really can supplement when you do have a niche area, and that being like paid amplification versus paid influencers versus organic influencers, which is just relationship building or trade types of things. But usually it varies. In my time, I've seen B2B organizations focus a lot more on organic relationships because they are true thought leaders in a space, in a niche. Potentially there could be conflict with even compensating them with cash based on the relationships the companies have. The more less expensive the product is available, more consumer forward, the more paid that has to take place. So, people may be brands of, like a Lay's potato chips, but it will be, more challenging for a brand like that to get influencers to work with them at a scale, because it's not the same as working with an H&M where, so much could be going back and forth from a product perspective. So it really just does run the gamut based on what sector you're in, what kind of products you make, and how you could engage with an influencer.
Brilliant. Great. Thanks, Larry. Question I'm going to send to Alex here from Chantel. How do you feel brands and creators can be more transparent regarding the topic of how much should we invest, pay, what am I worth?
So I think one of the best ways to be able to be transparent around this, I've seen this, again, evolution of creator communities. And I know we have different, like the American Influencer Council has just launched, but having these candid conversations within your communities and your influencer network will help understand how you should be, tiering your rates and what you're looking for, and be open and honest and direct with a brand. Like, I think a lot of the times we tend, or at least myself, coming from a creator mindset, you tend to devalue the impact and effect that you could possibly have. You don't want to be, price something in an astronomical or almost be insulting to a brand, but understand the value that you bring, be able to back it up with what you've done in the past and show that you can have that impact as a content creator and feel confident in the conversation and what you're asking for in terms of a rate. So I hope that answered the question. If not, anybody else can feel free to jump in.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to move on to the next question because I want to get through as many of these as possible. Thanks for the answer there, Alex. I thought it was a great answer. Question here for, let's go, Rachel. Do you find the ROI of influencer marketing outweighing other channels, i.e. paid ads?
Ooh, tough one. They have the time and place. Obviously, I'm a little biased with influencer marketing, but yeah, there's definitely, again, it comes down to your goals for the campaign. They often work well in tandem. We do boost a lot of our influencer content. So I don't think it's an either or. I think it's a yes to both.
Okay. Question here from Nick. Larry, I think you might be best for this. As a brand, it seems harder and harder to get any reach on Instagram or Facebook. It feels like a black box and you never know what results you will get. How can a brand get more organic reach and engagement?
Yeah, I think that Reels is a great opportunity right now. It's priced below the market. The way the algorithm works is it's more like TikTok, so the viewership is kind of through the roof. I'd also go through and look at influencers' video metrics, because that is something that is public if they're not authenticated into a platform. So you can get a better sense of the viewability rates that they're getting. And if impressions is the number one way that you've seen things work for you, then I think that's the best way to get at it right now.
Awesome. Larry, I'm going to stick with you for a moment here. Question here. How do you keep up with the rules and guideline changes? And do you support the influencers, or are they expected to keep up on all the platforms?
Is that about the guideline? I don't know if it says about like FTC
like
guidelines.
Standard FTC, and I guess that's for new influencers that are starting to grow. You might identify a micro influencer, and how do you support those individuals in keeping up to speed with standards and new platforms, or do you at all?
Yeah, there's the ftc.gov website has up-to-date, as much as they will update them, the updated guidelines. They have simple PDF one sheets that you can Google, or you can just look at the site. I always recommend to go and sign up for newsletters that are possible with the different social platforms, because they will email out terms of service changes. And then I also recommend subscribing to influencer-specific, like, agencies and vendors within the space, because they, of course, as a part of their sales tactics as a B2B company, produce a lot of content around the influencer space. So even though a Facebook or Instagram kind of don't blast out these changes that they're making, they might update a blog post, these other companies will make that much more well known that these changes are happening for influencers.
Awesome. Question here from Pauline. Can you share, so I'll send it to Rachel. Can you share some examples of B2B influencer marketing tactics? What can that look like if they are different to B2C?
I don't think they necessarily have to be different, except for maybe it's less transactional. I think there is a really strong storytelling element that is why B2B influencer marketing can be so successful. It's a people-first strategy. Because as we touched on before, it's a long sales cycle. So your audience gets to know this person, they trust them, that you build rapport. And I think that's probably the most successful tactic, because you kind of have that person who's your red thread through all of your campaigns. You're not just bringing in a new face constantly. You have to have that trusted individual or individuals which really resonate with your target audience.
Brilliant. Larry, a question here from Boris. What role do you see database solutions and data scientists playing in the field of influencer marketing going forward?
I think it's going to be one of the largest shifts in the industry. It's already been underway for a long time. As Alex was talking about, they're changing the algorithms that they're writing to populate the right messages that people should be seeing over what they're not seeing. The same thing with, influencer activation and selection. We use a number of tools that are kind of scanning everything that people are publicly putting out there and want us to see. So we use that in order to narrow down to these people who would be a perfect fit for a brand based on not just aesthetic or what they're talking about, but their ethos as a person. So I would definitely say, as an influencer looking to get discovered by brands, is making sure that you're doing that in a place where people can, or where marketers can see it. So, story placements aren't something that can be pulled in by platforms unauthenticated. So I know that's where a lot of conversation happens about your personal life, but so making sure it's in your bio, making sure it's in feed so that it's kind of all about SEO. That way marketers can see what's important to you and can make those matches. If you keep it all in stories, it's very challenging for us to go out and find, you if you're not a celebrity who's getting press every day.
Fantastic. Final question, each of you can answer. Let's go Alex, Rachel, Leo, and then Larry. Who is your favorite influencer?
Oh, I love, right now I'm loving June Ambrose. So we work with her at Pinterest. She's also on Instagram, Facebook. She's a mom. She was like a stylist for Missy Elliott, Puff Daddy, costume designer, creative director, author. But she's just, I think her content is so special. She's got a show with her daughter. She just really cares. And she's evolved not just from fashion and styling, but to conversations around anything that impacts her life, like being a mom, her daughter, how we're seeing the world change. And it just comes out in her work and her content. And she's great. She's a great character.
Awesome. Rachel.
Oh, I have too many to count. And also, even though I'm in B2B tech, I follow all kinds of fitness individuals and cooking and way too many to share. But what I've come to realize with 2020 is the value of a skilled digital host. And Ian, you're doing a fantastic job. But a moderator that can carry the conversation and really make everybody shine is just a really great skill set. And even though someone can be creating fabulous content on their Instagram story, when you pull them into a setting like this, it doesn't always translate. So that's one thing I've taken away from this year, is that there are different personas that make a successful campaign, and the host is a pinnacle part of that.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Rachel. And Leo, I'm not going to judge you for actually identifying an influencer you're loving right now, based on Rachel's answer there. Leo, who are you loving right now?
Well, it's my friend Sabir, Men's Style Pro. He's been a men's fashion blogger for, I think, over like 10 years now. He's actually the guy that inspired me to also go out and do this. But especially like for 2020, it's been amazing just to have him share more and really inspire me to do the same. He's sharing about his experience as a Black guy in United States, and he's also sharing about his experience with mental health. So just like really important issues that outside of just fashion, he's opening himself up and sharing all of that. So
wonderful. Thanks, Leo. And last but not least, Larry.
I mean, yeah, I have a lot from doing this a long time across a bunch of different verticals, but Gigi, the friendly potato on TikTok, is hysterical. She uses the snap camera lens of the potato every video. You've never seen what she looks like. And she's talking about her customer experiences as a retail employee, and definitely worth a watch.
So wonderful. Thank you, Larry. And I know we've gone a few minutes over, but it was certainly worth it. Everyone, all of our panelists, should I say, thank you for taking the time out of your valuable days to join us in unpacking this discussion. It's incredibly topical, and your answers and your insight has been invaluable to those tuned. And to those tuned in, thank you for taking the time to join us today for our digital leadership series focused on influencer marketing. We hope you've learned a lot. There will be a recap of this event and the discussion we've had with some of the highlights. And if you've enjoyed us, please tune into our future events later in the month and in November and into the new year. Until then, take care, stay safe, and we'll see you soon. Bye, everyone.